Welcome back, builders. This week we are taking a look at Middle Age Caelum, Reign of the Seraphim. Caelum is a magocracy of winged humanoids who inhabit the highest mountain peaks. In ancient times, there were three Caelan clans led by semi-divine beings known as the Yazatas. The Raptor clan was accepted by the Yazatas, even though they were held responsible for the corruption of Catharsis. When the Horab Seraphs of the Raptor clan began to study dark magic once more, the purifying flames that were tainted and Catharsis became Anthrax, king of baying fires. As a result, many of the Seraphims died from a wasting disease, and their sacred task was abandoned. The Horab Seraphs were condemned, and civil war broke out. The Raptor clan was banished and scattered across the world. The last of the Eagle Kings disappeared and were replaced by the High Seraphs of the Area clan. The Seraphs were administrators, judges, and temporal leaders of Caelum. They are masters of air magic and craft the magical ice that Caelans use instead of regular metal. The ice tempers with lower temperatures, and the heavy ice armor is more durable in cold climates than in warmer ones. All weapons crafted from the ice are magical and capable of harming magical beings. The areas live in the coldest mountain peaks and are unaffected by low temperatures. They are thin and light. Spirehorn Caelums are less resistant to cold, but have partial resistance to lightning. Since the fall of Horab Seraphs, more of them have turned to martial occupations. The Caelans are skilled archers and prefer hit-and-run tactics, even though they do have some heavy troops, such as mammoths. So, as is the theme, just like most nations moving into Middle Age, we have not had the best time of things. We used to have kind of a more diverse roster. We had these guys who were a little more into fire and death. They had some chaos-ish type demons that they like to summon in. They have been expelled for the most part. We had enough of their bunk when they were messing around with Catharsis, and they caused us all kinds of problems, including the loss of our sweet, sweet Eagle Kings. So we are much reduced from our early era predecessors. Let's take a look at our national features. As a race, we are flying, cold resistant, we have partial shock resistance, and we prefer a cold scale of +3. For military, we have flying units, skilled archers, and mammoths. Magic-wise, we are very strong in air. We have some water and a little bit of astral, death, and a tiny amount of fire. Our priests are weak, and we get guardian spirits. For scales and blesses, we get a cold limit of +1. Buildings, we actually use ice forts. Forts reduce cold scale deaths by 1 step. So this is very important because it will slow down the pop kill when the cold gets too high. And we are going to want it to be very cold because some of our troops use ice armor, which, as mentioned above, is much, much better in cold scales than they are in warmer scales. For sites, we have 2. We have the Citadel of Frozen Crystal. This increases our cold by a maximum of +2. That means we can have cold 5 in our capital. This is a little bit unfortunate because this is going to cause some cold deaths even with our 1 level of reduction. This also gives us our sacred units. We actually have 2. And it allows us to produce 3 air gems and 2 water gems. Not the best, not the worst for gem income. Secondly, we have Raven's Veil. This only allows us to recruit the wingless. Units and sacreds. We have a okay roster, I would say. We have a couple things we're good at, and we have some distinct weaknesses here that we're going to struggle to overcome with our baseline troops and be looking other places for fixing that up. First up, we have the Spirehorn Militia. This is a militia unit. Should be noted that even our lowly militia has a magic weapon, and how low he is with his 8 morale. As a chassis, we are about human stats, give or take. We are size 4 because of our large wingspans. We have a little bit better magic resistance. This guy in specific is very untrained as a militia unit. I would never get these guys if at all possible. They just don't do anything. All of our troops are going to have magic weapons, so this isn't a standout. And he's not good with it, and he's not strong enough with it. All around, not particularly useful. Next up, we have the Spirehorn Archer. This is a short bow unit, unfortunately. Do note that even as an archer, we have an ice knife, which does give us a 10 magic attack, and we're actually pretty decent with them. We wield a short bow. It's very unfortunate that our short bow doesn't have like ice arrows, which would give us magic damage or something, because as far as short bows go, this is pretty mediocre. We don't have quite enough strength to add a decent amount to it. Note, our HP is down at 9. Our defense is at 9. We have low protection with just a leather hauberk, no helmet. These are okay. I tend to actually use these on fire and keep distance and just pepper things with arrows. The troops I would like to use in melee are generally heavy enough not to take too bad of losses, but it's just a short bow in middle age. It is what it is there. So that's a little unfortunate we don't have something a little stronger. Next up, we have the area light infantry. This is a better unit. Now we're actually doing something. So 10 gold, 11 resources, 9 recruitment, pretty standard. We only have 9 HP. We only have 9 strength. We are size 4. What do we actually have? Well, we're flying, just like the previous ones. We have 15 cold resistance, and we have ice armor 1. So for every cold scale, our protection will go up by 1. So ideally, we're fighting in cold 2 or 3, so our protection's really 10 or 11. That's okay for a light infantry. We do have an ice lance, and we're at least decent with it, with 11 attack. This is an actual lance, so you get that first strike bonus. That is pretty good. Do note, charge damage bonus depends on the combat speed and size, or only size for flyers. So we get our damage based on our size 4. Otherwise, they at least have a shield. Unfortunately, again, no helmet. They're okay. We will definitely be using some of these, because it's either those or the Spirehorn Warriors. So our second option would be the Spirehorn Warrior. This is 10 gold, 7 resources, 9 recruitment. This one, leather, let me just double check. Yeah, he's got the leather hauberk instead of the ice armor. So when you're doing your early expansion, if you're going into heat or non-cold areas, maybe you go this way, because remember, the ice is weaker in hot. So they'll kind of come out in a wash. These guys are a little less resources, so they're a little cheaper. They still have the ice lance. Their stats are otherwise, I think, the same. Actually, they have 1 more defense, so maybe that would help you out a little bit. Overall, these have really high attrition. They are best used for attacking archers or attacking rear and just trying to wipe out light things and cause HP morale routes. And like grindy combat, you're going to see them fail quite badly, unfortunately. Next up, we have an interesting one. These are the wingless. They're a cap-only recruit. These are like what got corrupted when Catharsis turned into Anthrax. And so they're almost like human now instead of Caelums. So still only 9 HP, still only 9 strength. So we didn't improve. We did go down to size 3. That's at least something. We do have snow move. That is nice on cold nations. I hate it when they don't have snow move. They have an ice lance. They are wearing the ice studded armor and have a shield. These are going to be your body blockers in front of your line before you can find something better. You can have higher attack density. You can have higher HP density than having your flyers be your front line. So this is one option you could go there. 10, 11, 9 is a tiny bit expensive, but they're okay. Beyond expansion, though, we don't really have good paths to buff them particularly well, so I think these kind of wear out rather quickly. Next up, we have the area infantry. Now we're starting to get to something a little bit heavier. This is 10 gold, 16 resources, 9 recruitment points. Again, the 9 HP strength is a bit of a distinct weakness. Now we're up to 11 protection before we have our ice armor. So in cold 3, this would be up to 14. Now we're edging towards like a heavier troop on a relatively cheap chassis. They're wielding an ice blade. Note that that is a length 1. It does give you an extra defense. Is a magic weapon. 14 slashing damage is a bit disappointing. 16 is kind of my gold standard for middle age, but it is magical and they're okay with it. They do have a hat finally. They finally figured out how to put hats on. They do have a shield. These guys are all right. I think they're fine, but there's better options. Next up, we have 2 versions of heavier troops. I'm going to actually go to Stormguard first. He's the lighter of the two. 15 gold, 31 resources, 21 recruitment points. So 50% more resources than recruitment points. So that's one reason you might consider production on this nation. Overall, this isn't too bad considering. They come in with 10 HP and 10 strength. So already notable, we're up to human stats. That's something. We are still size 4, but 14 defense. That's not terrible. Good protection. Remember, this will go up by 2 per cold scale. So this could be up to 20 protection in cold 3. Okay magic resist, okay morale. These guys are all right. Their main claim to fame is that they have storm immunity. So if you're going to be throwing up storms and you want to do them early, these guys would still be able to fly through that and land in the back. Finally, for the flying troops here, we have the Ice Clad. This is our heaviest troop. Well, heaviest non-sacred troop. 15 gold, 40 resources, 21 recruitment points. So now we're double resources compared to recruitment points. We're back down to the 9-9. So that's a little disappointing. But we have good cold resistance. We have this ice armor too, and we're starting at 17. So now we could go up to 23 protection in cold 3. That is very distinct. That is a heavy troop. People are going to need specialized troops to be hitting into 23 protection. And that's without taking into account our Ice Aegis that we have, which is an 18 protection shield. So these are really heavy troops. They do have somewhat high encumbrance. They are still wielding an Ice Lance, and they're pretty darn good with it. I like these troops a lot. I think between the two of these, it's just what can you afford, and do you care about the storm flying? Generally speaking, I think I actually like this guy better. Although I will say 13 damage on his Ice Lance compared to only 12. Again, 13 and 12 are numbers I don't want to hear in Middle Age when I'm looking for 16 damage. So that's a bit of an oof. And again, we don't have Earth on access easily, so we're not able to do Giant Strength, which would help these guys out an absolute ton. Next up, we have the meme unit, the Mammoth Rider. Some people swear by Elephant/Mammoth expansion. I don't think it works nearly as well in 6 because of the increased troop numbers and I think a general higher quality of some indies. I tend to find that you just can't get enough of these guys to get that initial trample hit that routes the enemy. Now, one thing that might change that is once you can start buffing them with Mist Form. That makes them a lot tougher. Another change in 6 is if you're ephemeral, then you do less trample damage. So we can't really do ephemeral elephants anymore. But Gift of Flight and Mist Form will be quite the disruptive force on some mammoths on hold and attack rear. In addition, we have some archers that can fire while he's moving. Do I count these for much? No, not in the slightest. After your mammoth dies, it's a couple extra guys to have to get killed, so it buys you a little more time. They have a magic weapon. They have a short bow. Not much really to say about those guys. The mammoth himself, 64 HP, especially if you have Mist Form, is something quite hard to chunk their way through. They do have cold resistant. They do have snow move. It is an actual animal, so magic resistance is only 6. I'm not the best at that type of expansion to begin with. I don't like these particularly. Where these would be decent would be like heavy infantry, I would say, or just lighter troops, things that we're not really going to struggle with particularly anyways. What we don't want is to catch a lance, to have a lot of arrow fire into us, to have something we couldn't trample. There's just a lot of things that are going to make a bad day. One benefit, if you do attack in with these guys and the rest of your army attacks rear, then at least when these retreat, you probably won't have too much in the way to get trampled of your own stuff. Finally, we have 2 sacreds. We have Temple Guard, cap only. These are Caelums who have cut off their wings, and they're wearing our really heavy armor. They are sacred, they are bodyguards, they have ice armor 2, snow move, and they are cold resistant. 15 damage is something of note, so now we're getting close to that 16 again. These guys, I don't know. I want to like them, but they have a couple of distinct weaknesses. One, they're really expensive. So In the early game, where they would probably be the most useful, they're just hard to get out. Secondly, they only have a map move of 12, whereas 20, I think 20 or 22, yeah, 20 is our standard. These guys only move 12, and they're not flying, so you can't fly over things with them. So you probably want these guys on their own commander so that you could split off your flying troops to go do other things. Where these guys would excel would be like guarding the gate on a fort that's being attacked. That's one place. They don't have the best offense, so I feel like they need some offensive oomph, but they don't have multiple attacks or anything. So maybe a cold aura, maybe just use them as speed bumps. Those are the things I think these guys would be best at. Secondly, we have the Blizzard Warrior, again, cap only. This is the rare Sacred Archer, and probably one of the better ones, I would say. They wield a Frostbow, which does extra effect on hit freeze, which is armor negating. That's kind of cool. So it's not on damage, it's on hit. So that's something. They have 12 shots. It is just a short bow, so it's only range 35. I don't know. I think it would be cool to use them, but they're just... I wish they were longbows. I wish they weren't cap only. I don't know. I'm not super duper impressed by these guys. I will say that they recently changed frost weapons to leave frost auras behind wherever the arrow lands. So if you did go with a frost aura, it would apply for both your temple guard and any other summons you use and your archers. Archers with that frozen mist maybe are vaguely interesting. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not super duper in love with these. If you are, let me know why you like these guys. Overall, I'd say the Sacreds are both usable, but they're not like distinctly amazing or anything. Heroes, Commanders, and Prophet. For heroes, we have two. We have the Sacred One. This is a commander version of our Sacred. I don't think there's really much else to say here. They do have 100 leadership. They do have the heavy armor. They are a priest level 1, I suppose. So that's nice on a commander. You can help get the blesses out. We only have priest level 1s as recruitables. So we do struggle to get our blessing out if we need lots and lots of it. So I guess that's all right. He's fine. We have the Hareb Seraphim. This is okay. It's a death 2, which we don't really get. So you can make yourself a skull staff for death 3. That's something. He is a priest level 2. That is the highest we've got. He is stealthy and flying. So you can do some stealthy preaching or something. He could be a guy that could maybe summon in some undead like melee chaff for your flyers. That's something. He could do hordes of skeletons. He'd be the only guy doing it, but he could do it. Overall, yeah, he's fine. It's not really nation defining or anything. For our commanders, we have the Caelum Scout. A little high on resources here because we're snobs and we give magic weapons to even our scouts. For trait-wise, he has shock resist, cold resistance, flying, stealthy, ice armor, and storm immunity. Things you're probably not going to use most of because it's a scout. But he's at least only 35 gold, so that's something. We do have a recruitable scout. That's also something. I will note, map move 22 is excellent. They're flying and stealthy. You can scout the world very easily and very quickly with one of these guys. Next up, we have two different types of generals. We have the Area Noble and the Storm General. The Area Noble has 75 leadership, so no formations here. They do, however, wear the heavier armor, so they have the 17 with the ice armor level 2. These guys are fine. I do like them. I really wish that these guys had 100 leadership, though. I will say you can make some super duper light battlefield thugs with something like a storm spool and a lightning spear. Especially if these guys can be mixed in with other troops. That gives you some repelling and it gives you some hitback shock. If you're in a very cold province, so you're sitting at like 23 protection, every time somebody's swinging at you, you're repelling, you're shocking them. When you stab them with the spear, you have armor negating shock damage. It's interesting and kind of cool. Do I want to spend too many air gems on that? I don't know. I want to get lots of owl quills, air elementals, storm drakes, all kinds of air things I could be doing. corpse constructs even. So I don't know if I want to do that, but it is okay. It's okay. It's distinctly all right. Second, we have the Storm General. This is our better leader. He's got the 100 leadership, so we now have formations. He's wearing the lighter gear, unfortunately. Does have the flying storms and other things normal. I tend to get these guys as long as I don't misclick the other guys, basically. I prefer having the leadership. And if you're using the lighter troops, they're going to have a lot of attrition. And so you're going to want them in formation, and you're going to probably need to have 100 of them because many of them are going to die. Next up, we have the Seraphim. This is our priest unit. Priest level 1. They do have a 20% chance to get fire. So a tiny amount of fire. Not very useful particularly, but if you get one, maybe they could get a little sight searching done or something. Otherwise, it's notable that they are very stealthy at 65. I like to get a few of these guys. They're only 1 recruitment point. They're not going to break the bank at 95 gold. We probably need to do a lot of temple spamming, so we're going to need some of these guys. I'll also note, they actually have 50 leadership. So in the early game, these guys use a lot less resources than our area nobles do. So if I'm not going to get 100 leadership, but I need to move reinforcements around, I actually kind of like the Seraphim more as a leader. They could go drop troops off at the front and then drop a temple while they're there. Do some preaching while they're there. They're okay. They're a pretty good utility piece. And they're flying, so of course they can fly around with your reinforcements. They're also the only thing we have outside of our prophet to bless our sacreds. If you need to bless sacreds, you're going to need a couple to a few of them in your army to do so. Next up, we have the Ice Crafter, a pretty cool mage here. 65 gold, 3 resources, 2 recruitment points. They're on the kind of the weaker bird chassis that most of our nation's on. They are 52 gold per year for 7 research. That's not too bad. They only get ice level or water level 1 magic, unfortunately. That severely limits their use as a combat mage. Severely. Frozen Heart is about the only really respectable cold ice 1 spell. So, yeah, that hurts quite a bit. They come in with some cold resistance. They're flying. They do have a forge bonus. Man, I wish we had a forge bonus on our other mage that we're going to look at. It would be way more useful. I would even consider maybe empowering this guy into Air 1 and making him do your forging, but it's only 1, so you're only saving 1 gem per Alquill. Are you going to craft 50 Alquills? Probably not. I mean, you could use him on some other Air 1 crafts, like the Spool, like the Lightning Spear, maybe. His big claim to fame, though, is ice forging. This means that when you're in cold areas, we can grant extra resources in the fort that we are in. The amount of extra resources depends on the level of cold. So I believe this is times the number of cold scales. These are very nice. They really make sure that you can spend all of your recruitment points on heavy infantry if you so desire. And as a researcher, 7 research for only 52 is absolutely fine. Nice efficient mage, if a bit slow. Next, we have the Spirehorn Seraph. This is the air counterpart to the previous guy. No crafting bonuses, no resource bonuses. He does have some shock resistance. He does have storm immunity. Research is 7 again, 52 gold per year, so nice and efficient here. These are what I'm going to get a few of to do some crafting for me, but generally speaking, I actually like to get the Ice Crafters early on. These are going to be your researchers, hopefully holding research boosting items and providing extra resources to your fort. One thing of note, if you don't have a reason they need to be in a certain fort, spread them out once you can't spend all the resources that you're producing in a fort so they can go help other forts out. Why would you want to keep them together if you have somebody with Inspiring Researcher? Next, we have the Caelum Seraph. This is our main combat mage. He is 175 gold. That's not actually too bad for what he is. 2 resources, 2 recruitment points. The weak chassis that we've been looking at. He has 2 air and a water. No randoms. This is okay, not the best. Again, I don't know how often we're going to be using water 1. There's one spell this kind of brings to mind, Cold Mist, I believe it's called, if you're already in a storm. But if you're in a storm, that's going to blow away mist spells anyways, so that's kind of out on him. So I'm not 100% certain what you're going to get out of the water. But an Air 2 Mage is fine. You can do Lightning just out of the box. You can Storm Power into Thunder Strikes, which is pretty decent. This is going to be your main guy, so figure out what you're going to do with him. And unfortunately, if you've noticed, I keep saying air and water, and I haven't really mentioned much else. So yeah, you're starting to see the problem here. Efficiency-wise, he's 140 gold per year for only 11. Don't get these guys to be researchers. Get these guys, they can research while they're waiting for combat, but don't get them as a main researcher. I think you're better off just going super duper efficient. Finally, we have the High Seraph. Now, I will note for these guys, none of these guys are cap only, so that's at least something. High Seraph here is slow to recruit and old and not sacred. So that's a lot of problems already. Luckily, he's not like super duper ancient, I don't think. Yeah, he's getting 2 encumbrance from old age, so that's not great. He comes in with 3 air, 2 water, and a random of air, water, astral, death. So again, those aren't the best cross paths. If you have one of these guys and he has to do your Corpseman construction, that's really inefficient. 355 gold, he costs 284 per year in upkeep, and you're really only using Air 1, Death 1. That sucks. He can come in as Air 4, so you can make boosters without anything else. That's nice. He also can storm without any help. That's also pretty nice. Beyond that, though, that's so disappointing. If you get an Astral 1, the danger there is somebody that just has a cheapo Astral Mage can spam 2 or 3 of them and magic duel your more expensive mage. And if they get stupid lucky, they take out your Stormcaster. So yeah, just be careful if you have that Astral and you're fighting other people with Astral. Not much else to say here. They're not wearing armor, and they are very squishy. If you have the gems, investing in something might not be terrible, but they also could just air shield or personal mistform themselves. That would be a fine way to keep them a little bit safer. So who would I make my profit? I would probably go with one of these heavier guys, unless you wanted a stealth profit, maybe? I mean, 55 stealth. Ironically enough, the priest is actually stealthier than your scout, so this would actually be a better stealth preacher than he is. But for me, I always go with one of these two. Ideally, I think I would probably do it on an area noble with the heavier armor, even though they have the less leadership, and then leave the leading around of troops to the storm guard. Yeah, that's probably the way I would go on that. So overall, decent mage, decent utility, but we do air and we do water, and we don't do a whole lot of anything else. So we're very predictable. And even the water we have only goes up to 2. So we're not throwing around big water. I mean, I guess we could have a 25% chance of water 3, so we could do some falling frost. That at least diversifies our damage a little bit. Water 3 also allows you to natively craft robes of the sea, so that gets you up to water 4. Again, I'm not sure exactly what that's opening up for us, but if you get to water 4, you could start doing some other rituals. If we go underwater somehow, we could do bishop fish pretty easily, so that's something. We can do some underwater water elementals. If there's no other water nation down there, maybe you could get under there and just take the land since nobody else has taken it. I don't know. They're okay, but man, they are predictable and a tiny bit overpriced due to kind of some weird pathing that's not the most useful in my opinion. National items and spells. As for national items, we have no national items. As for national spells, we have several. First up in Thaumaturgy, we have Parting of the Soul. Unfortunately for us, we only get this on our very expensive slow to recruit old mages, and it's not great as a non-spammable spell. It's level 6 Thaumaturgy, Death 1, Air 1. It basically hits you with a paralyzed attack, which is armor negating, magic resistance negates, and it summons 3 Blackhawks on the person. This is actually a really good spell, I believe, in early age with different casters. that are much more spammable than what we can do here. This is a okay spell. If you paralyze them and then birds peck somebody to death, that's hilarious. And birds are very distracting for troops and commanders. But you're having a dude that has air 3, water 2, death 1 cast this spell. I'm not sure. And it's really fatiguing to do. Second, at Thaumaturgy 7, for 4 death and 1 fire, so something completely unnative to us, 15 death gems. We can call the Drugvant. These are the people of lives. We'll take a look at them when we're looking at the actual summons we can do. Probably not it. They like heat, they like turmoil type stuff. That's really not what we're about. Our next set of spells are all in Conjuration. At Conj 3, for 2 nature for any of these. Herd of Elephant for 20. We have Mammoths. I think that's out. Ambush of Tigers for 9. These at least do have multiple attacks, and they do have some dark vision. Maybe they could help you underground. We don't have any nature natively, though. Herd of Buffalo, 8 nature gems, and you do get 5+. I really like Herd of Buffalo. It's one of my few nature animal spells I actually really like. But again, we don't have nature 2, so not really happening there. Next up at Conjuration 5, we have Call Ahuranai, we have Summon Yazetas, we have Call Devas, and we have Call Jahi. We'll look at all of these when we go over to the preview screen, but here, generally speaking, I think the Astral ones are vaguely reachable. We do have a little bit of Astral that could get out and do some site searching. Getting an Astral 2 isn't the hardest thing ever, although we're not natively really going to count on a 10% chance. That's disappointing. And down here, again, we do not have Death, Fire, Crosspath natively, so those are going to be ridiculously hard. At 6, we have Call Celestial Yazed. We have Call Yata. At 7, we have Call Fravashi. At 8, we have Call Amesha Sepenta. And we have Call Greater Deva. Most of these are not things we can do natively, unfortunately. Just none of these. And that's so disappointing. I really dislike nations that are like that. EA can kind of do these, and I think Raga, which is one of our successor nations, can kind of do some of this. But for us, most of these are not going to be useful. Before we go look at the actual units, I will call it a couple things. Air elementals are nowhere near as good as they used to be, but they're still okay as an elemental. Especially if you have storms up, that helps them out an absolute ton. Other things I think are of big note. Call of the Winds, if you need patrollers for some reason and you don't want to use your own troops, is pretty efficient. Storm Power, of course, from here. Storm Drakes. I think Storm Drakes are pretty good. 5 air gems and you get 1 Storm Drake. Storm Drakes can fly in storms, and they have a chain lightning breath that they also use in melee. Unfortunately, they're undisciplined, but I think these guys are okay. I think you would get them ideally once you have Storm, and ideally, I think you would probably design a Pretender to make the Dragon Master items that make them a little more efficient. One of these guys for 5 gems is okay, maybe pretty borderline. 3 of these guys for 5 gems is pretty good. So that is my take on that. I do think that would be pretty valuable. A Pretender can make those items and give them to an Air 2 mage. And we have easy Air 2 mages. And we could really ramp this up if we can get some Air income rolling. Which we can search all the way up to Air 4 natively and relatively easily. So we should have pretty good Air income RNG providing, of course. Beyond those, Springhawks, some people swear by those. Draconians are not terrible. We do have Raven Feast. We can cast this natively, which is nice. This basically, we can convert unburied corpses into death gems. That's nice if you can find a way to spend those death gems. That is something there, I suppose. We can do contact sea trolls. I don't think that has to be done. Yeah, that does not have to be done underwater. That gives us some like melee troops that don't fly that we could just stick out in front, which is something we're really, really looking for. Bishop Fish, of course. We could get to Sea King's Court. We're going to have to craft a Robe of the Sea and have some kind of lucky stuff happening to do it, but we could get there. And this is just even more efficient troll thing. And their troll commander, their king, is actually a water mage, and he also is a gem. He produces 1 water gem per turn. So this is a pretty good spell. The troll guards especially are armored and have I think it's a glaive, some sort of reach weapon. So they're actually pretty darn solid. Putting some trolls with mist form on them would be pretty spicy, especially ones that can also repel. So kind of an interesting thing there. We can do living clouds. This is the bigger air elemental spell. That's another place that's not terrible. We could get with a booster to the Queen of Elemental Air if you wanted to save up for that. That could be pretty handy. Moving over to Alteration, your big ones here are going to be Mist Form, Protective Winds, Mist if you're not doing any range stuff yourself could be pretty good. Aerofend is not bad if you're not using Storm. Storm, of course, allows us to summon Storm Power. That's probably going to be needed so that you can Thunderstrike. That's really our big magic that we can kind of do. We don't have a ton of other options. Like all the normal things we love, which are nature and earth, we just don't have access to here. Fire, no access. Glamour, no access. That just hurts. It hurts a lot. You could, with some finagling, get up to do a blizzard. So you're going to be looking at, you'd get an air 3, water 2, and then he would put on a robe. And then for 2 gems, he could do blizzard. This is a battlefield enchantment. Sets cold scale to 1. Do note that. There are specific requirements here. So I believe, the blizzard spell can only be cast in regions of neutral or slight heat. So you can't use this to improve your cold, but it does give you a way to make a place cold during the fight. I think it's, cold scale 1. That's better than it not being cold, because remember, if you're using ice armor troops, you get a penalty in warm. So at least you're getting a +1 or 2 here. Reduces precision, you lose missiles, you lose clouds. Can only be cast in heat 0 or 1. So very specific where you can use it, but I think if you have this and you can cast it, I think you would be very grateful that you can. Just really sad that that's it. Aerofend, of course, Fog Warriors. This is where we're heading for just larger and larger buffing, ending in Army of Mist. This is very achievable for us. We can roll into a 4, we can put on a helmet, and then he only needs 3 gems to cast it. And this is a battlefield-wide Mist form. I think once you achieve Thunderstrike, we're probably moving back to this for Army of Mist. I'm not sure what else we would really shoot for. One final call out here. Woven Winter. Water 3, again, very achievable for us. This is a ritual with range 5, and it adds cold scales of +3 and kills off 5% pop. So if you're having to fight into cold or into heat, you're going to start prepping it with this. Do note, recently we did some science and some people shared that the order of operations is actually the ritual goes off, the combat happens, and then the cold scales hit. It's a weird order. So you need to pre-prep 2 turns in advance, basically, if you're going to try to use this to make things cold in front of you. So you are probably going to be pumping this spell out, and you can't target the same province with the same ritual at the same time. So you're going to have to be hitting multiple spots, getting it prepped up. So annoying, but probably necessary here. For evocations, we're mainly going to be looking at going for a little bit of water, but mainly the air stuff. Of course, lightning bolt. I think you do want to get lightning really, really early because you want to have something in case you get attacked. If you're losing the troop war, we don't have a lot to fall back on. Do note that lightning bolt does hit rider and mount, so this is an option for helping you clear out heavy cav. Our troops just don't hit hard enough to get through their high protection, so this is a way that you can do it. It's armor negating 14 plus damage. Also has an area shock AoE 1. Armor negating does 1 point of damage. So heavy troops, heavy cav. This spell's okay, even early on. It's okay. Do note, very precise, so you at least won't have a ton of friendly fire. So that's a nice thing, at least. Moving down further, we can cast rain. Do note that rain turns into snow when it's cold. Snow isn't as good as rain at suppressing fire for some weird reason. Just weird trivia fact for you there. Moving further, Thunderstrike. This is our baby that we probably need to get Storm and Storm Power up first, but range is 100, area of effect 1. It's imprecise, -2 precision. Yeah, that sucks. The fatigue cost is 50. That's pretty painful. So you're really going to have like Summon Storm Power, Personal Mist Form, Thunderstrike, and you're asleep. There's not a lot else you can do there. I guess you could drop Personal Mist Form, but you're still going to probably fall asleep anyways. Do note, this is pretty spicy damage, and it does have an area effect 10. So you can get a nice wide-reaching little hit there. So let's say you had 5 of these going off. Let's say they, for some weird reason, hit the same square. That would still be 10 area effect 10 damage. That's pretty spicy against humans, at least. Going past that, we do have Hurricane, so we can send Hurricanes against people. Wrathful Skies, again, we can natively do this with a little bit of work. 15 armor negating shock damage. Storm doubles the number of lightning strikes. So if you have an army that you're either going with some lightning resist or you have buffed lightning resist, this is pretty good. It's a battlefield enchantment, so you're going to go Storm, Wrathful Skies. That's a spicy amount of damage. Yeah, you're probably going to need to cast your own protection spells, though, before that. Perpetual Storm, another pretty good one. Very achievable again. And this just puts the entire world into a storm. Everyone has some income reduction. Map move is lowered. It's harder to fling ritual spells far away. Caves and underwater are unaffected. This is probably worthwhile. It'll save you having to cast Storm every single fight. Do note that it does affect your own income, does affect your own map move. So it's not like you're immune to that. Cleansing Water. This is a very potent anti-demon and anti-undead spell. Much better than our lightning spells would be in that case. So if you need to fight one of the big undead nations, I do think that's worth grabbing. Thunderstorm, again, not bad at all. This is a ranged attack thunder damage thing. Yeah, this is actually a pretty good range spell. Note range 3 is pretty low. If you could get a 5 air guy to do it, you get some extra hits. Not bad. As far as these type of spells go, I actually kind of like this one. Can hit commanders too, so that's something pretty nice. Beyond that, Chain Lightning, if you get that far. Lightning Field, another pretty decent one. Area of Effect 100 is pretty ridiculous. I've never actually gotten to this spell, though, so maybe a bit dubious. Construction, I do think we want to rush a lot of construction. We can do Alquills pretty well, so I think we definitely go Construction 3 ASAP. That also gets us Lightning Spears, that gets us Storm Spools, that gets us some minor water items. Going up to 5 would allow us to get Air Boosters, Flying Boots if you have anybody like an indie who you can't keep up with your army, you could give them Flying Boots to help them keep up. Bishop Fish could benefit from a Flying Carpet at 5. If you did go up to 7, that also gets us the second Dragon Mastery item. There's a helmet and a rod. One of them is at 5, one of them is at 7. So again, another one there. Lightless Lanterns maybe at 7. That's not really something we can particularly do easily or well, but it would be there. Yeah, that's just unfortunate. That's just really unfortunate. We just don't have a wide pathing on our mages. In enchantment, if you're going to do archery stuff, it's in here. If you need protection from lightning, it's in here. If you want to buff mammoths with Gift of Flight, it's in here. Where are you? Gift of Flight. Wherever. Levitate Soldiers. Gives just some extra AoE on that. True Shot Warriors. Cloud Trapeze. This is kind of nice to get mages around if you have to use it. Vile Water. Gives us something we could do with those water gems. Gelatinous Cubes with Mist Form and Gift of Flight. That's actually kind of spooky for a lot of nations to have to deal with. So that's something kind of interesting that we can do. Thunder Ward, we're just getting bigger and bigger. Trade Wind. Coastal Province income plus 25%. We can build some pretty beefy castle structures, including our capital, which is a citadel, which is really nice. Yeah, I think that's fine. I would totally cast that if I had a coastal fort that had some okay income. I think that would probably be worthwhile. We're going to need tons and tons and tons of mages, so all the income we can get, better. We can natively cast Dome of Solid Air. Not a lot of nations can cast protection spells with just recruitable mages, so that's kind of nice. You can see I'm kind of stretching here. I'm really stretching for these guys. Featherlight Army is a cool one. You can't be hit with Earth Grip or Earthquakes. I mean, if in the situation where you need it, you're going to be happy you have it. And of course, Thunderfend just gives massive shock for our whole army. Thaumaturgy, not much here. I don't think we're really going to do communions. We just don't have enough astral to make it worthwhile. We do have our remote search. I don't think we need to remote search here because we just have easy access to site searchers that are quick and can move around pretty well. Beyond that, yeah, that's just not worthwhile. Dark Skies, this one is worth calling out. So Air 5, again, totally castable normally with a little bit of work. Dark Skies is very powerful. Enemy morale is lowered by 1 for each point of dominion. Slight darkness in battle. So the darkness doesn't really help us, but lowering enemy morale by 5 or 6 points just globally inside your own dominion is brutal. Absolutely brutal. I mean, that takes a morale 15 down to just 10, which is like regular morale, and it takes a 10 to 5. They're looking for a reason to leave. Dark Skies, and then you're going to hit them with a couple lightning spells. They're probably already retreating. So this could be a bit of a stretch goal because it's kind of in a path we don't really want, but very powerful if you did get there. Galegate is another interesting one. This is our air gem generator. It also makes our air elementals larger. That affects trample damage and what we can actually target with tramples. It does also create random hurricanes. And the better our mage is who casts this, the better chance that we have them actually hit the enemy instead of ourselves. So that's kind of handy, I suppose. And we're not going to do any blood. So as you can see, I had to stretch here a little bit. We can do big air and a little bit of water. The only other thing I can really think of any vague interest, Freezing Mist. This might be a stretch goal early on because you're going to need a Robe of the Sea to cast, but this is pretty nasty, and we have cold resistance on all of our troops, or a good chunk of them. Air Effect 10 plus is not bad. Level 4 is good enough to do some damage and freeze things. This is vaguely interesting, I guess. But again, we're going to need to be at Construction 5 before we're really looking at being able to cast it. For our summons, we actually have a quite wide variety of summoned units. I'm not going to go into super duper detail here. If you want more detailed thoughts on these, check out my early era Caelum video because these are much the same. Overall, we just don't have access to any of the pathing that's going to allow us to get most of these. If you do, they do actually have some variety, and they are actually high-level priests. So there could be an argument made for making a pretender that could do these, but we don't have native income for any of these. We don't have astral, we don't have death, we don't have fire. So that feels really, really, really bad. Again, here's the fire and death guys, but we're just not going to be able to summon these. I just don't see getting the gem income up soon enough for them to be relevant. If we were going to get something, it's probably going to be Yazad's. So you're looking at astral and fire for the most part. If we hop over here. Another one is the 2 astral spell that summons in Yazad's. These are what you get. These are the best of what we can get and the most possibly achievable. They're sacred. They have Awe 2. They have shock resist, cold resist. They're magic beings. They have flying and storm immunity. These are pretty good troops. 16 HP and some extra strength makes them one of our best troops. And the extra awe makes them a pain to get rid of. So hold and attack rear. These guys will be a big, big pain. Note that these also, while they have fire plate, it doesn't have like fire power or anything. So they're fine in the cold and they're fine in the heat. Unlike our normal heavy troops, which really need to stay inside of the cold. And they still have a magic lance, and they're actually strong enough to actually kill things with it. So I do think these are worth giving consideration to. Astral 2 is achievable. Beyond that, the animals just really aren't doing it. We don't have native nature. We don't have native death. We don't have native fire. We don't have native astral. I don't think any of those are going to be of much use, unfortunately. Okay, let's bring all of that together. Caelum is a nation that is solely focused on air magic with a little bit of water. We have ice crafting. We actually build special types of forts. So if we look here, we have ice walls. We can only build forts inside of cold. So in this game, I actually had pretty okay expansion, but my cold scales refused to push out quickly. So despite the fact that I'm sitting on stupid amounts of money, I couldn't get started on these forts until super duper recently. My cold just refused to move out from here, and I had an Abyssia neighbor. His scales came over here. I had a Satis neighbor. His scales were pushing in here. So that was rather painful. Do note our capital here is an ice citadel. This gives you two bonus commander points. So 3 commander points in total. You can get a mage and a commander or a scout. You can get your cap only guy. You can recruit him. He does still take 2 turns, but then you're left over with 2 extra points. And then you can get another one, another mage with those leftover 2 points. So you can actually pump out a lot of mages really, really quickly in the early game. And they're pretty cheap, efficient mages. So we can ramp our research pretty decently. That is a nice bonus. Other than that, I do believe ice places are pretty good. I also think that if they're in heat, they actually are weaker. Somebody confirm that for me, please. But you're definitely going to want to keep these guys in the cold. You can see here, administration, supply, storage, and wall integrity will be increased in high cold scale, decreased in heat. Prolonged heat will melt the fort, and it can become permanently damaged or melt away. So that kind of sucks. I will note here, this is another really weird specific interaction. The walls are enchanted, so ethereal units cannot pass through them. So that's kind of cool. Ethereal's a great way to bypass walls during normal sieges, so that's kind of interesting, I guess. The extra admin, though, is noticeable. My scales in this game are not like stupendous or anything, and just I'm raking in the dough. I'm raking in the dough from my capital. Remember, we have cold 5 in our capital if you go cold 3, so we're going to have a ton of bonus from that, which is good because you're going to need it. You have expensive troops, and you can't build supplementary infrastructure very easily. We have a pretty good strategic map move, but we're hindered by the fact that we really want to stay inside of cold with our best troops. So if you're going to be attacking out of the cold, taking that into account with what you're recruiting. You do not want your main armies running around with melted armor, just dying as freebie troops, when you could have just got crappier but cheaper troops to do the same thing. So another kind of distinct weakness there. Let's take a look at some pretender design. For pretenders, we actually have a pretty decent spread, although the usefulness of many of these I question quite a bit. Generally speaking, I think we are looking for some production, and I think we're looking for magic diversity. A lot of those things we could summon in otherwise, we just can't do natively, and there's some crafting stuff that would be beneficial, since we basically do air, and we do water, and a tiny bit of death, and a tinier amount of fire. So I think we're looking for things like that. Otherwise, we also would like to get lots and lots of research, so maybe something like an inspirational researcher could be a play here. I do think that could be pretty useful. We can get mages quick too if you have them awake. We could really pump out the early game research and get to some of those research goals that we really, really, really need. Beyond that, we do have some unique ones. We have an Arch Seraph. He's only 70 points. This is a really, really cheap chassis if you wanted to just make something stupendously cheap. Give him thunder weapons or something like that. This guy could do it stupid cheap. Moving up to 2, I do think there's an argument to be made about an expander god. As long as you don't mess up your cold scales, so no heat dragons, I think you could use a dragon. I think you could do it. Sloth is not great for us, but if you're only going to pay for 1 production anyways, that's not really a penalty. So you have kind of your choice of different things here. Some people swear by Draco Lich. I'm not the biggest dragon enjoyer. I really don't. Remember, our sacreds are kind of mediocre, so the things that they need the most are either something offensive. Well, they mainly just need something offensive because they just don't have the damage that you otherwise would really need. I do think there's some interesting celestial griffins. We'll look at one of those in a second. Beyond those, is how I'm kind of feeling on a lot of these. We do have a whole bunch of different chassis from kind of like our summon type things. Again, I'm not really seeing too much here. This guy is, I guess, interesting in that he has the 2 astral we need, but he's 260 points. I could definitely get an extra astral and an air on like any of these 3 chassis for like 30 points, and they all cost like 100-ish. So that's pretty dubious. Moving up to Dom 3, again, I always feel that Titans are, for the most part, just overpriced. If I was going to look for a Titan here, maybe production. Do we even have one? I don't even think we have a production. Nope. One of the few reasons I would take one would maybe be if I'm really pumping that production, which I don't think we need to do with the ice crafters. So again, I'm just not seeing any of these guys that just jump out at me. They're just so expensive. Moving up to Dom 4, this is at least a little more interesting. Sacred Geyser can make some pretty interesting blesses that could be vaguely useful. Yeah, again, I wish we had a production chassis and we don't. Wooden Colossus can expand. Again, I'm just so sketch on that. Like, what would we even take here? What is your natural protection? It's only 10? Oh, I just can't even. You would do hard skin, and he would self-buff himself with an extra protection and personal regen. So you would be, like, starting point would be like this. Yeah, something like that. And then you would take hard skin, and I don't even know what else. You want this to cast personal regen, so you're going to have to research that. This only gets him to 16. So even with a big buff, he's not that high, and his HP is not that good. I don't know. I'm not a Wood Colossus enjoyer. You do have the meme Elephant Idol for 390 points. I just don't see this as ever being worthwhile, if I'm being honest with you. It's just too stupid expensive. Let's take a look at a couple pretenders that I did make. First up, we have Sky Terror. This is a Celestial Griffin. He is awake. He comes in with thunder weapons. That's it. Just thunder weapons. That really helps out either your archers or your troops because that's armor negating damage that they can deal. For him himself, if you can get him personal mist form and then have him go with an army, I think it would be totally fine because you have other flyers who can land with him to hold an attack rear. So you're going to do like personal mist form, probably air shield because you have to wait anyways. And then you hop in the back, and he does have fear. That's pretty good. He has really high air, so you're guaranteed all those air stuff, but we can pretty much already get that, so that's not a huge bonus here. He's going to provide you extra candle spread, which means extra cold spread in the early game. He has okay amount of candles. I think if I was going to mix this up, I might actually drop down to 1 production and up maybe growth by 1, because we're going to have some pop die because our cap's cold 5. That's just too cold. Some growth will help negate that a little bit. Yeah, he's okay. I didn't do much testing with him just beyond like, okay, is he going to instantly die? And he didn't, but yeah, keep him. He can only really be inside your own dominion, so you're going to be very incentivized to push that dominion hard, which you're going to want to do anyways, so that's not the worst thing ever. He'd appreciate if somebody would buff him with some resistance to cold. Also, he doesn't have that, and it's going to be very, very cold wherever he's fighting. Our second chassis here is Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man here is an imprisoned chassis. He's coming in with shock resistant, large, and chill aura. Mainly, this is for our melee sacreds to just be a good blocking force for late game mages. I like the larger in this case because our damage is already such garbage anyways that the density of our troops doesn't really matter. And I tend to find that we can't get enough of these guys to be a wide enough line. And larger takes them from 3 to a square to 2. Normally a horrendous penalty. In this case, I actually just want them to be wider. As long as you stay in cold 3, they have 23 protection. With some shock resistance, you're not going to have too bad friendly fire. And the chill aura just is a way to try to like slow down combat and give your mages more time to get extra hits in. I could totally be convinced easily to drop Chill Aura, which frees up a lot more points. Maybe you could get him down to just Sleepy. I also could be convinced to drop down on production, down to production 1, and maybe we could do it that way. His main claim to fame here, he wants to make the Dragon Mastery items. For that, we need Earth, and we need Fire, Water, and we need Fire, just for the various items. He can summon in our Astral guys if we can get some. Our Astral troops are not the worst, so that would be okay. And I just needed to spend points, so we grabbed a couple other things just to give us some more magical variety. Overall, I'm not certain on these, either one of them. I don't think we want to go too heavy on Bless. I think we are a Scales nation, and we want to support our mages, but our mages are not sacred, so we're just looking at making as many troops and as much money as we can do otherwise. Let me know what you guys can come up with. I'm not super duper enamored with either of these two. I do like the idea of that Griffin build. I just don't know if he fits in here well, because we already can do the high air stuff. I think on some other nations, he would be interesting because he would bring that high air that otherwise you wouldn't have access to. So, food for thought on that at least. In conclusion, Caelum is still an all-right nation. I don't think we're as good as we were in early age due to our lack of magic diversity, but we still have some pretty heavy troops, limited strongly by our need to stay inside of the cold. But in a defensive war, I do feel like we are pretty well equipped for it, and it'll be difficult for a lot of nations to attack into us. We also don't have to worry about Niflheim, like EA version of Niflheim coming in here. There's a lot less things that are going to really enjoy attacking into our cold 3. So I feel like that's a little bit safer of a bet than it may have otherwise be. We're definitely going to be rushing some construction. We definitely have a vested interest in getting high efficient research going on, and then switching over to pump out many mages to hopefully carry us to victory, because we don't have a ton of options. We're not a wide victory path nation for sure. All right, that is going to be it for Middle Age Caelum. I'm kind of excited for this one. I'm really curious to see what other people's thoughts are. I feel like I've got to be missing something because they feel so straightforward to me compared to a lot of other nations, but maybe that's just the case here. Maybe these are just cold Abyssia as it is. Go ahead and leave comments for blesses and stuff. As always, I'm really interested in those. Beyond that, thank you everyone for your support on the channel, whether that is super thanks, joining us on stream to hang out, drop a super chat, or consider becoming a member on the channel, and you get early access to the pregame videos like this one and whatever else I am working on at the time. Other than that, get out there and watch the skies, builders, and I will catch you on stream. Babble out.